Coming from Cincinnati, this is the Spin Lob.
Welcome, everyone, to Season 1, Episode 8 of the Spin Lob, called You Call That a Foul? With our special guest tonight, Chad Packer. He's an Ohio USA water polo referee and a collegiate water polo referee as well. Also a former high school coach and several other things that we'll get into as well. This podcast, as you all know, is dedicated to Ohio water polo and how we fit in the national scene. It's a combination of what's going on in Ohio, the Midwest, and at the national level. Recap from the last time we met a couple weeks ago, we had Tony Azevedo. He's a 5-time Olympian silver medalist and 4 times Coutinho Award winner. He talked about how knowing your teammates and how you contribute to the team is very important. He also talked about the 6-8 app that he and Maggie Steffens have put together that's going very well. So tonight, we'll be discussing a lot of water polo with my main guest. I actually have a personal relationship with Chad because he used to coach me while I was in high school, and he brought me into the sport of water polo. But he's a former Sycamore High School coach, a former Princeton High School coach, and now you see him on the sideline as the Ohio Water Polo Referee Association supervisor, head of that, as well as the head zone referee for the Great Lakes. Before we kick it off with Chad, Nick, do you have any updates with what's going on with Ohio?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of good news coming out of Ohio in terms of water polo. At least in Southern Ohio, we start to see teams starting to dip their toes back into the pool. This morning, the Masters program, Ohio Squirrels, had their first practice, which both Mike and myself had a chance to get back in the pool. Mike, you want to kind of run through some of the precautions you guys did?
Yeah, we followed our guidelines from the state of Ohio as well as the pool practice set. So every person that, first of all, they have to sign a waiver before they come to practice. They do a temperature check at home as well as when they walk into the pool. We are following 100% the 6 feet social distancing method. So we're doing a lot of lap swimming, that's for sure, but we have divided up and separated ourselves into lanes. We are doing very limited ball handling, but we are getting back in the water, a lot of leg work, a lot of lateral moving. We had a great turnout. We had 17 players this morning, all followed very well. And at the end, we wiped everything down and we went straight home. So it was a great turnout, and I can't thank our partners at the Y for what they did to get us back in and following protocol, and we're happy to be there.
Yeah, and I mean, along the same lines, both St. X and Sycamore High School had started up this week. I got our boys back into the pool at Brookside, which is a great outdoor facility, which is always fun to be in. But the same type of thing, a lot of safety precautions. We have a questionnaire that they come through every day talking about, do they have any symptoms, so that way we can check contact tracing and things, and they're broken into pods so that we don't have cross-contamination. But a lot of it was just the first week was conditioning drills, just getting themselves back into it, because a lot of people haven't been in the pool in a long time. I know me swimming this morning felt like I was swimming through Jell-O, not moving very fast. On the club side, both the Marlins and Moose are starting back up as well. Moose had their first practice today. Marlins get kickoff tomorrow as well. In Northern Ohio, the only thing I kind of really have seen coming out from them, Napoleon sent out some workouts back in the end of May about what they're going to do in June, but haven't heard too much yet about starting from Columbus or any of the northern cities that are playing some polo up there. I do know that on Tuesday there's a big coaches gathering from master's level and high school and club from not just Ohio but from across the region on how people are starting up and what they can do and protocols that they're going to go through to get themselves going. A couple other big changes around the state. St. Francis' head coach, Carl Strauss, is stepping back a little. He's not completely leaving St. Francis, but he's having a kid they're expecting at mid-season. So he's kind of stepping back from the head coaching role while that is happening. A much smarter plan than I did when I had all 3 of my kids during season. In fact, when I was having the twins, I think I was on the way to the Princeton High School tournament and had to turn my car around to get back to tell the school that I was not going to be in for the next couple of weeks. Up in Columbus, Caitlin Spangler has replaced the retired Upper Arlington head coach Dan Pietrkowski. She is also the vice president of Ohio Water Polo Association. And speaking with that as well from the Ohio Water Polo Association, it looks like there's going to be some changes coming down the pike in terms of how the state tournament might be handled this year. According to state calendar, it looks like we're going to go back to a regional format. Not all the details have been kind of hammered out, so we'll keep an ear out for that. And then on the calendar down here in Cincinnati, the ever-popular Jose Cerda Car Wash has been set for August 8th, so you can get your car nice and dirty, head over and help support all the Cincinnati teams that get into helping out at that fundraiser. That's all we've got for Ohio right now. So I'll turn it over to Mike to kick us off with.
All right, Chad. So thanks again for joining us today. We appreciate it. So to kick it off, we always like to say, who is this guy or who is this girl? It's on our call. Any background you can give us on your experience within water polo?
Sure. So typical Ohio high school experience. I started in ninth grade and played all 4 years there. Started refereeing right out of high school for 2 or 3 years, and then coached at Sycamore from 97 to I think maybe 2003, fall of 2003, and then coached Princeton until about 2013 or so, and then been reffing ever since. So there hasn't been a fall since 1989 that I haven't been involved in Ohio high school water polo.
So it's funny that you're basically saying that pretty much year round, your eyes are just being chlorinated with the pool all the time. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you leave Ohio high school, and then there's some winter tournaments I do, and then jump into the or the spring collegiate season, and then go right into the summertime with USA water polo. So I'm reffing pretty much year round at this point. I may take a month off or two here or there, but that's about it.
That's fantastic. So kind of to wrap our minds around that, you're doing a lot of travel year round, not just within Ohio, but also outside. Outside of Ohio, can you just kind of mention what kind of cities you've gone to around the country?
Yeah, sure. So I've been to Houston, been to Phoenix. I've refereed at ASU. I've refereed out in California for USA Water Polo. And then you go up into Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida. Yeah, it's kind of been fortunate to go all around now. So
yeah, that's incredible. And we can be greedy here in Ohio. What you're learning out there and what you're embracing out there, you're bringing back to Ohio. So we can't thank you enough. I know several of your fellow referees have been traveling a lot over the past couple of years, and we appreciate that. So it's great to see the extension you guys have made around the country. So congrats to you and your leadership. So new to us recently, you have started your own podcast. We wanted to get into that because I think it's fantastic. The title is, and correct me if I'm wrong, That's Not a Foul. And
it's actually just That's a Foul.
That's a Foul. Okay. Nick and I were going back and forth on that, and thanks for correcting us. That's a Foul. And we were just curious, what was the foundation behind that, and how is that going for you?
The foundation behind it is the thing that keeps me involved in water polo, especially water polo refereeing, is just the camaraderie with coaches and players, but mostly with referees. There is nothing like being a referee where you have this tremendous amount of pressure to be unbiased. You can't root for anyone. You are the arbiter of the rules. You're the manager of decorum. You are first and foremost the maintainer of player safety. That brotherhood and sisterhood that exists between referees is something that like I said, I just can't describe. And if I had to describe it to you, as they say, you wouldn't understand. And I've met so many cool people, and I think there are so many good stories to be told. It is very exciting, some of the national people that we have coming on board in the upcoming weeks. But it's also just as exciting to have just kind of your everyday referee that goes out there, a couple of days a week and on weekends year round, no matter where he or she is at, and, whistles the games. Because without referees, that water polo is definitely one of the games that would be most hardest to play without a referee. You can do pickup basketball, you can call your own lines and tennis and so on and so forth. But, water polo really requires referees. And I think referees across water polo, but across all sports, got great stories to tell. You could ask any referee, how did you get involved? And she's going to be able to tell you, what brought her into the sport and the advice that she's given, because all the referees are, essentially Micah is as a former referee and a future referee joining us again, hopefully. You can relate. All the referees are a little bit of every referee with whom they've ever ref. And I think those stories are really kind of what we're aiming for on this podcast. We're not really looking to talk a ton about what do you think of the foul, how would you call this, and what's your mindset. It's really more about, some fun stories that you have, and maybe something you can just kind of throw out there that somebody can grab and go forward with it.
Now, are the referees you're interviewing, are they so across the country, or is there one group that you're pulling on right now?
They're going to be across the country. The first episode I had my daughter on just to talk a little bit about father-daughter relationships, just to kind of set the tone. But then we had John Reitmeyer on he's from San Antonio. Sam Meisner is a local Cincinnati referee, but Sam is a 27-year-old teacher union president, and I think his leadership philosophy was important to get on there. And then we just had Levon Dermengian on last week. So we got kind of a two-part thing, because I'm really trying to keep those guys down to about 25 to 30 minutes, because I think that is very digestible. And then I've got some vines out to some of the national team coaches and a couple other high-level national referees. And then I've got a couple of people coming on just to kind of tell their stories. One's a former student who's got an amazing story. And but it's starting now to trend more towards leadership and a little less about sport. So we'll see where it goes. I don't know. It's kind of fun. I like to talk leadership, so that's fun.
Yeah. Where can people find these your podcast at?
So if you go to the website, tafpodcast.com, they're all on there, but also linked up to, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, all the big ones. It's now out there. So a lot of folks are finding it on Apple and Spotify.
And I believe Twitter, it's at TAF Pod, correct? If you're
Correct,
on Twitter.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and really all that's going to be used for, Nick, is just kind of updating. Hey, I got a new one. I'm like you guys. I'm trying to bang one out a week. So we'll see.
So there have been, and I know your podcast is not necessarily about the rules, but coming into the fall season in just a couple of short months, we do have some major rule changes. Can you give us a little highlight of how those are going to kind of play out this season?
Yeah, for sure. And I appreciate you having me on. I think it's going to be really, really good for us to do more of these things and talk about it. So thanks for doing that. And by the way, I really appreciate what you guys are doing. It's always great to promote Ohio water polo, and it's great to have, these high visibility, high impact people in here too. So kudos to you guys. I would tell you guys that you guys kind of inspired me to say, hey, I can go ahead and throw my hat in the ring too. So thank you for that.
And do much better at it already.
Some of the big, so the rules are really going to mirror a lot of the FINA rules, which USA Water Polo first adopted, some in 2019, all of them in 2019 at those high level tournaments, right? The National League, those kind of things. But now in 2020, all the new ones are in play with USA Water Polo, and the NFHS adopted it too. I'm pretty sure they're going to stay with that 2-year rule book. But some of the big ones are going to be, that 5 meter line that kind of becomes that penalty zone or whatever has been extended out to 6 meters. And so along with that, a foul outside 6 meters is now eligible to be shot directly, whereas it used to be at 5 meters. The big thing that really changes with that, though, now is that the ball is in play where it lies, right? So before, if the ball was let's say it was out at 3 meters and you whistled an exclusion at 7 meters, the ball had to come back to 7 meters. Now, sometimes it didn't always do that, but we really tried to bang on the referees because that was the rule. Now that player at 3 meters, she's just going to pop the ball in the air, and now the ball is live again. It doesn't have to come back to that 7 meter exclusion. If there's a foul outside 6 meters and the ball is outside 6 meters, that player can now also visibly put the ball in play and shoot it directly. It doesn't have to go to another player, right? So that's another thing about that 6 meter line. it's the same as the 5-meter line was before, where you could shoot it directly and it couldn't be defended. Well, now if the ball and the foul are outside 6 meters, that player can visibly put the ball in play and shoot it directly without it going to another player.
So does that mean, like, so if I have the ball, I can swim with it and then shoot again outside the 6, or does it? So it doesn't have to be an indirect shot. Is that what you're saying?
Right. So good. That's a good push. It used to be it had to be direct, otherwise you couldn't shoot it. Well, now if you don't shoot it directly, you have to put the ball in play, and then you can shoot it. But does that make sense? So
Yeah.
right. Okay, I was just making sure I was being clear on that. And yes, Nick, to your point, you could pop it and swim with it, and then put it back in play again, right? And you could shoot it outside 6 because you put the ball in play, and you could shoot it inside 6. You could put the ball in play and swim with it and just shoot it like you're live again.
So that's really kind of trying to prevent that whole foul and drop scenario for defense, making it easier on the offense to get some shots off that.
Correct. Yes. Which is why the next rule, kind of talk a little bit about that, is corner throws have those exact same kind of guidelines. On a corner throw, as soon as the referee throws the ball to you or it comes in from the bench or whatever, you can pick that ball up and shoot it directly, or you can pop it up in the air, clearly visible air around the ball is what we're hearing a lot from the higher level referees, air around the ball. And you could dribble it around and just shoot it. So you're live again. So that, like you said, that foul, and now you drop to the center and the team's almost 5-on-6 offense, right? Because that player's not an eligible shooter unless you make them live. That player is now eligible. So it's really widening the pool a little bit, which I think is what it was intended for.
Now, as a former coach, are you ever going to advise someone to shoot from the corner at the 2?
I don't know that you'll see too many direct shots because the angle's so crappy. But there is a fantastic video that I have, and it's higher level, Italy or Italian player, and he puts the ball in play and kind of swims up to about 4 meters, and the player goes on the high side to steal it, and he reverse spins and drives right into the goal and puts it away. And it's clear as day what he almost knew what he was doing. He knew the rules. And I think that's what you're really going to notice a lot is that the players and the coaches who jump on top of these things, players and coaches who are educating themselves by listening to podcasts like yours, they're going to find out about that stuff, and they're really going to educate their players, and they're going to jump out early. So it's going to be interesting in 2020 and this initial stuff, players who haven't been playing USA water polo. So
I guess you could also use a good spin lob from that corner too.
You could. Good name drop. Well done. Marketing 101. That's great. The other thing that's big is, remember we used to talk about a water polo move puts the ball in play? Like
that was always a
fake.
Yeah,
that's no longer the case, right? You must pop that ball up in the air. So you can't, sometimes, like, let's say a player dumps the ball out to maybe 1.5 meters, 2 meters away from mid-pool to make that other player swim for it. If she swims for it and just starts dribbling it up the pool, referee's going to turn that over after she gets to about 2 or 3 meters away from where the ball was, because you have to pop the ball right where it is. And then, so swimming with it is no longer allowed. You can't just take the ball and start dribbling with it. You have to clearly, visibly have
pick
air
up the
around the ball. And
and
that could, I mean, and that is going to be the biggest challenge for referees. Speaking for referees, that's going to be one of the biggest challenges, to get referees to understand you have to turn that ball over. Because otherwise, if I'm a player or a coach, it's going to be really hard to get used to the rules, and that's called inconsistently. And that's one of my bigger concerns for referees who maybe don't watch a ton of film or maybe haven't really gotten used to these, is the fact that ball's going to have to turn over. Because, I mean, God knows, we talk about this all the time. Once you call off the bottom one time, you got to call it the whole game, right? If you get, Nick, if you're coaching in the deep end, let's say, and we turn the ball over because one of your players doesn't put the ball in play, I know for sure, as a coach, to be fair, you're going to be looking for me to turn it over when they don't do it, and it's going to be a steep learning curve on that one. So that's a big one. I'll try and be moderately quick here. Referees now, you know how we used to point to the 5 meter line for a shot that was eligible outside 5, and now it's moved to 6. We now raise our hand up in the air. So you almost think about the 3-point signal for basketball, just one arm now. It's kind of a funny rationale for that, but it just makes it clearer for the fans because they might not be able to see you pointing, but now it's pretty demonstrative when you hold your hand up in the air. So that's a big one. We talked about corner throws. We talked about free throws. There's one where if a player leaves the field of play, he can now swim to the exclusion area and come back in without a penalty. Whereas before, you know, if a player ducked under the lane line or something like that, it was an immediate exclusion. That's not really happening anymore, which is kind of nice. Really more for floating, lane lines with all the extra room around it. Not too many of those pools in Ohio. And then the last one, well, there's 2 more, but one of the big ones now is that sometimes you see that player and she's going to the goal. She's about 3 meters. She's got the ball high up in the air, and a player comes and doesn't strike at the arm, but smacks at the arm and knocks the ball out. And sometimes you'll see ref kind of do that thing like they're holding a ball with their hand underneath to demonstrate that the player was holding the ball. Has to be contact with the ball now. Anything other than that, even if the player is holding the ball with a probable goal, all the other things that kind of fall around penalty being awarded, it's an immediate penalty. And penalties are still taken from the 5-meter line. So the 5-meter cone is still going to exist. Penalties are still taken from that. That's a big one. And I love that rule. I had a chance to whistle that earlier this year in Greensboro at an ODP event. And it makes it a lot easier on the referees because now it has to be contact with that ball or it's a penalty, which is kind of nice. If you follow the USAWP referees Twitter account, we've been posting a lot of those penalties to show now that, just because a player is holding the ball, it was just getting too physical, I think was the big one. And there wasn't enough of a penalty for a player who was behind to still be able to hack on the arm. So that's a big one. And then the last one that's pretty big is that goalkeepers no longer have restrictions. They can go anywhere they want in the pool. They can be involved in 7-on-6s, maybe at the end of a quarter, the end of a game, and they can also take penalty throws now. So those are the big ones.
So is there a 5-meter cone and a 6-meter cone then?
Yes. Yeah. So the 5-meter cone and the 6-meter cone are both in yellow.
Both in yellow. Okay.
Yeah. I think they're both in yellow. I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure they're both in yellow now.
So it seems like this coming year or it has been already, it's a major transition year for the sport with all these new implemented rules. Things are being modified, things like that. So let's go back a little bit in history, Chad, and talk about your transition from coaching water polo to refereeing. When you move from one position to the other, was there any change of mindset? I'm sure the same passion for the game was there, but now, like you said in the beginning, you are, the enforcer of the rules versus you were trying to navigate the rules back then. So walk us through that transition, because a lot of people have gone through that.
Yeah, something that I used to say as a coach was, I referee every day. When a referee would maybe say something or whatever, and I always tell the story. The first tournament I did after coaching for 18 years was Nick. It was your boys' JV tournament, and I was so nervous. I was blowing the whistle. I was moving the ball around where it shouldn't even gone. I was calling USA water polo. I was just such a mess because, when you're coaching, maybe you're trying to call those fouls to generate a 6-on-5, or you kind of blow the whistle however you want. And then as a referee, the weight of having to be unbiased, and then at certain levels, that's a big difference between high level collegiate, especially like NCAA stuff, versus high school, is that all 6 pairs are doing something. Whereas in high school, you kind of know, especially in Ohio, because we don't have a ton of players, you kind of know who the best players are and kind of who to watch and which players are overly physical. You can kind of feel the game a little different. At the NCAA level, all 6 pairs are doing something. And they're always either trying to take a cheap shot, or in the women's game, there are just suit grabs everywhere, and it is exhausting to referee those games. It is just truly exhausting. So the biggest transition I had from coaching to refereeing was kind of knowing where to keep my eyes. And initially, you kind of do a lot of ball watching. And then you start to hear this, look for the pass one off the ball. So you're looking for those holds. And then all of a sudden you start looking for holds two off the ball. And, I think the other thing that I really tried to do a lot in that transition is just to watch a lot of other referees and how they call the game. There was a game that I refereed in January, and ball came over to the 5 spot, and my partner immediately whistled an exclusion from across the pool at the center. And he said, yeah, when that ball came over there, that center defender really wrapped around hard to get that position, get ball side. And I remember thinking, I didn't even know to look for that. And then sure enough, the next game I looked for it and I got one. And it's just that constant revision of what you're looking for and where your eyes are and how to really open and see the whole pool. So that's kind of been the big transition piece for me, is that, you're still learning every single time you go out there. There's always, and you always see something new, right? They always say, go to a baseball game, you're going to see something for the first time you've never seen before. So that's kind of been the big transition. I don't know if that completely answers it, but moving from
great.
coaching to refereeing was really about trying to catch all the pairs in the water, is kind of what I would say.
Yeah, and you said it earlier in this same podcast how the referee is very important for this sport of water polo, because there's so much movement. The game is constantly changing within the pool. Every pass, like a good example, because that ball shifted down to the 5 spot, that shifted the defender, and that defender got called for the exclusion because that ball shifted down. That's what happened. I don't think many sports can mimic that same kind of constant amoeba movement. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
So we got one more question. This is going to get a little deep here. So, a lot of athletes have a pregame routine, and you as a referee, do you have a pregame routine that you do, in every game?
I think something that I am trying to get better at is thinking on a level of what happens when I get to the pool and how do I get ready and what am I thinking about? What am I doing? So I'm starting to watch players warm up more, starting to work on taking bigger, deeper breaths and trying to get myself into that spot. I got really good advice at, I was able to do the Women's Collegiate Club last year at Notre Dame. And Brett Bernard and Jack Horton were out there, and they did that video dartfish stuff. And so after the game, we would get to talk, and then afterwards we would get to talking, right? We weren't just talking about the game. And those guys were really big on, going off, kind of find a spot over there, get yourself into the mental state where you're ready to go, because a lot of these games, if you're not ready to go at the start, the game can get away from you pretty quickly. So my biggest thing is walking the deck with my partner, finding some time to kind of watch some of the warm-ups, look for players, look to see who the lefties are, make sure benches are squared away. Some of the best advice I got at an ODP event was to control the controllables. So make sure all the balls are out of the water, move the benches back, make sure the cones are aligned, make sure the table's ready to go, make sure the cords are out of the way, make sure the balls are at the right inflation, make sure the clock works. Does the shot clock horn sound different than the game horn? Those types of things, who's waving the flags in, all that management stuff before games is something I'm really trying to do now. But to answer your question succinctly, I'm really trying to watch the players before they begin and get them into a mental state that when the horn sounds and the madness begins, then I'm ahead of the madness before the ball even drops and hits the water.
Well, we are running low on time, Chad. I mean, we could keep talking about all this stuff for all night, but we want to thank you so much for joining us this week. If you want to do a little plug for your podcast again, and then we will let you go for the night.
Right on. Yeah, sure. It's tafpodcast.com is the website. And then That's a Foul is the name of the podcast. You can kind of find it anywhere. And anybody that's got ideas or topics or anybody that wants to me, love to hear it, because everybody's got a story to tell, and we're all just kind of adding to the sport we love with those stories. So appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Chad. All right. Well, once again, that was Chad Packer, one of the head referees of Ohio and in our zone. And we are about out of time tonight. And don't worry, goalies. In our upcoming podcast, we plan on having Olympian Janai Kerr along with Cage Cap founder Tom Ray to discuss what is all going on in a goalie's mind. If you have topics or shout-outs that you want to on where you're playing college or high school or what's going on in your region, let us know at cincywaterpolo@gmail.com or on Twitter at cincywaterpolo.
Great. The Spin Lob is produced and recorded live by Mike Jones and Nick Helwig. It's supported by the Ohio Squirrels Water Polo Club. You're never too old to get into the game. Go nuts. And also by the Marlins Water Polo. We love the game there's Marlins Water Polo. And also our theme music is produced by Jason Shaw at audionetics.com. See you next time on the Spin Lob.